And there the Mighty Dash sits in the rain at the end of runway 36 at KOMA Omaha at Blue Field. That you see in the background improbably is the skyline of Omaha, which I'm not sure feature 1,000-foot skyscrapers, but maybe I'm mistaken. I do know that everybody I know who's been to Omaha likes it a lot. And one day when I find myself traveling cross country, I will probably make a stop there because everybody I know who's ever been through there has had good things to say. But the one thing they have not said is, oh my God, I can't tell you how cool the 1,000-foot skyscrapers were in Omaha, because I don't think they exist any more than the military base housing exists on the edge of the airport, or the high school exists right off the runway threshold. But, you know, that is just a function of scenery, nothing else. We are flying today from KOMA to KSTL St. Louis, and the weather in St. Louis is, if I'm not mistaken, even crappier than it is here. It's raining, it's cloudy, it's foggy, and the ceiling is about 500 feet lower than here, so it should be fun. The other thing that really has me baffled here is that, as you can see, as we resize our gauges there, to sort of fit my preferred setup here. The reason why we're resizing the gauges is because I've reloaded the aircraft, and the reason why I reloaded the aircraft is because despite having the correct altimeter plugged in here, it is showing the field elevation as 500 feet higher than it should be. The field elevation at KOMA is about 985, and as you can see, it's showing about 1,420. Despite the fact that I can tell just by looking that the altimeter is about right at this setting, which is 2974. What I'm going to do is, just for yucks, I'm going to go into my iPhone here and I'm going to check as I'm talking the weather in Omaha and see whether the barometer is a little bit different than, for some reason, what Active Sky Next is showing, but that shouldn't really explain why Prepared is giving me this. But alright, it is 37 degrees in Omaha, and it's listed as cloudy but not raining, and the barometer, alright, it's close. It's 2980 according to my iPhone's weather, and according to Active Sky Next it is 2974, but let's just recheck it. Okay, it's up to 2975. So again, we'll set our altimeter to 2975, and we'll note that our field elevation is there, which it's not. So, having done that, it's all the more reason to get the hell out of here quickly. The other thing is, I'm not showing a magenta line, so what I will do is I'll do a direct to, and again I'll go direct to Rilge here, and that should, there we go, that displays a line, and that's our course, and this is lined up. What I've done is I've backed up our GPS course with Omaha VOR, which, as you'll see, we're going to be getting onto and joining the 104 radial outbound. So what I've done here is, if we look at our nav source here, I've got the 104 set. So if we really want to, we can do about a 270 degree turn, and actually about a 220 degree turn, and we can re-intercept going this way if we want to. But you know, let's see what we can see. Our V-speeds are set, our heading bug is set, our bus tie is off, heats are on, landing lights are on, bleeds are on and min, passenger signs are illuminated, our caution panel is dark, All our pumps and auxes are on, auto feather is on, flaps are set, trim is set. Let's just see if we have our rudder trim set right. Let's just set it to about 10 right. I'm not going to worry about the HUD right here because we're not so bad that we need a HUD to take off, but we might want to use the HUD when we land, just for giggles and the other thing. And you can see we're in wing level mode, and we don't want to be in wing level mode. We want to be in LNAV mode. And just set our decision height back down to 200 for when we land, if we need to land back here. Spin that sucker down. And that is set. Our altimeter is set. This is our first waypoint. And I think that will permit us to advance the power, get the hell out of here, and stop worrying about why our altimeter is screwy right here and see if it's screwy elsewhere. So, up comes the power. In my last video, you might have noticed that our 80 knots, our condition levers were wonky, and that's because the pots on my SciTech, here we go, V1 and rotate, our my SciTech throttle quadrant were lousy, gear up. So I switched the props to a different pair there. Anyway, let's turn more towards our outbound course. Bring our flaps in, and in a second I'll kill that ATIS right there. Flying with one hand here and tweaking with the other. There we go. And with that silenced, let's pull back our props. Got to remember to pull back a different set of levers now. But these are levers I don't generally use, which means that the pots aren't dirty, which means they are actually behaving normally. Alright, turning onto course here. I'm going to IAS mode. Pop in the autopilot, which is not going in. There we go. I feel like it's going to be a wonky day. Our cruise altitude is 270. Turn off our auxes, turn our bleeds to normal, and let ourselves fly skyward. And it certainly likes low pressure because we are, or low density altitudes, because we're going up at 3,500 feet per minute at 197 knots with a decent load of fuel and a full load of passengers. So not a bad day at the office as we turn our anti-ice on, open up our boots, check our pressure. So far, so good. Cabin altitude is normal. We'll let our passengers stand up and turn out our lights. And I know for the pedantic among you, I turned out the lights about 1,000 feet too soon. But we're up there, and we might as well do those items while we're looking at them so we don't have a chance to forget them. And we continue to go up like the proverbial bat here, which is good. And while we're at it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check our nav1 here by using the format key, and I'm going to see whether we've intercepted our 104 radial. And we are working our way onto it. See, we're coming out of here, and ultimately we're going to turn going this way on the J151. Just see whether I set the J151. If not, we'll do it. So we're going to Rilge, and from Rilge we'll go to the J151 to Lamoni. So put this here, go to list, go to airway, and there ain't nothing from Rilge. That's a J151. Let's go to Red Oak. Let's see if we're past it. So back here actually, and we'll go to RDK, and it doesn't show it, which means I entered it wrong. And there is no waypoint for, let's try KRDK. That'll work. Silly me, I thought it was a VOR. Alright. That's Red Oak. And let's go back and look at our route here and see whether we've screwed it up. We're well on our way, and we're going direct instead of by the route. I'll bet you Red Oak is right there, so get rid of Rilge first, and watch this. Watch what's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen is we're going to fly in heading mode for a minute, and then we're going to go direct to KRDK, and then watch what happens down here. There. So now we're going to turn, see? And we're turning to Red Oak, and then we will intercept the J151 from there. So watch now. What I can do is right here, go to list, airway, except I can't. Not offering me any airway because it doesn't think there is one. So let's go here and list, and still none. Alright, well, we're going to fly a pseudo airway. Here, watch. What's going to happen is we'll fly here, and I'm going to pop us over into our VOR preview here, and you'll watch as the CDI comes in as we approach KRDK, which will more or less do the same thing even if the computer isn't letting us do it. I blame society. In a second we'll turn our altimeter to standard, but in the meantime we'll hold down the format key, and now you see we're working our way inbound towards what will be the J151 airway, and I'll bet you dollars to donuts in a second we're 13 miles away from KRDK. By the time we get there, this will be at least closer to here, if not centered, as we turn outbound from KRDK. So, see if my faith in my own navigational skills is justified. And we are above 18, or flight level 180, so barometer gets set, altimeter gets set to 2992. As we continue to go up, and we can turn off our ice protection because there ain't no more ice. Off it comes. Check our pressurization. Our cabin altitude is still fine and safe. Our differential is still within parameters. Everything is glorious and copacetic, and as you can see, The clouds are quite something, and it is still snowing or raining up here. Let's see what the outside temperature is. The OAT is a balmy 12 degrees centigrade, or Celsius, or C. And our dew point, or our freezing point for icing is 17 below, so it's a 29 degree differential between how cold it is and how cold it would take to freeze. So that ain't bad. Now you see how it's coming in, and as we get closer to KRDK, it turn us and we'll in essence head outbound on what is, we're sort of imitating the heading. And what I'll do is, since we're a little higher altitude, I will increase our rate of climb a bit, and I do that by decreasing the IAS. And you notice as we point the nose up, we'll slow down till we hit 180, and our rate of climb will increase. I'll put in a little right rudder trim here to center the little quadrilateral. And we've blown through a little bit here, but as we turn back, it'll come closer. So we're approximating the 151, whether or not it's going to let us do it. In the meantime, I'll just pop us back into our map mode, and there we are. So we're going to turn east in a second, northeast in a second, and this is the RMI needle, which is showing nav2, which is again pointing to Omaha, and that'll point almost directly behind us once we make the turn. Other thing we'll do is we'll set up our nav1 as backup for Lamoni, which is a kind of unusual Italian name for the middle of Nebraska, but it just means I don't know enough about Nebraska, I suppose. So we're going to Lamoni, which is 116.7. Pop into our arc dew. We'll set it to 116.7 for Lamoni, just so we can get a read on where the next station is, and also get a sanity check, because we're going to be turning immediately towards it. And as you can see, it's 64 miles away, and indeed we are turning right into it, which is a very, very good thing. And it's just a way to back up what we've set for our flight plan with the FMS. Again, like the last time around here, watch, let's do this. Let's set our nav 1 to 116.7, which is Lamoni. And what we'll do is we'll go direct to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to abandon our FMS here, pop ourselves briefly into heading select mode, so keep flying this heading, and get a little bit of a drift there, because we've got a hellacious crosswind. What we'll do, we've got a little bit of a drift because my heading is selected just a couple degrees off where we are. What we'll do is we will tune ourselves direct to Lamoni, and the way we're going to do that is we're going to pop our nav source over, and we're going to turn our course selector until it comes in centered there. There we go. Put ourselves in nav mode, and now we're going to lock onto this particular direct route to Lamoni VOR, and you'll see it more or less echoes the magenta FMS GPS based route we've set, with a minor difference because we haven't figured out exactly what this corresponded to on the radial, but we're going to get to Lamoni anyway. In a second we will center this up and the airplane will turn us to the left. And in another second we will level out at 270. Bring our props back and just fly the cruise. That's our 1,000 to go. That's also our cue to check outsell. You can see we're in VOR mode now and in blue needles, so we're not on our FMS, but we're in essence flying almost the same route. Also going to check for our first altitude constraint. Below 31,000 seems a little bit just random, so we're going to disregard that. We're going to go to Riverside and set above 12 for our constraint, or 12 or above. Excuse me as I yawn. 2, Riverside, 5, and we're leveling out, so we'll pull our props back on our working SciTech levers, not the crappy broken portion of my quadrant. So 5 here to Riverside, already has our constraint, and that's good. And that is rather steep, so let's change that to, I'm wondering why it's so steep. Something's a little bit fluky here, and I have yet to figure out what, but that's a reasonable glide path, and there we go. So as we track inbound to Lamoni, and we're cruising here, and we've set our descent, and we're at standard altimeter, and everything is Jake, as they say, and we're battling for some odd reason, even though we're flying east. We're flying up against a monstrous headwind, and into, as far as I can tell, I think, well, there's no SIGMET at the moment, but we're going to be flying into a, as you can see right here, a socked in St. Louis. Let's see, it is, altimeter is, let's see, wind 270 at 10, visibility 10 miles, overcast 1500. So when you take field elevation into account, there's going to be about a 700 foot above ground ceiling. Should be interesting. With all of that in the works ahead, I'm just going to stop the recording here, have myself a bowl of Captain Crunch, which I really shouldn't, and see you in a few.
Speedbird 115 Heavy, Kennedy ground. Continue on Bravo to the ramp. When you get to Whiskey, yield to not 1, but 2 JetBlues.
Yield to 2 JetBlues. My goodness, that Whiskey. Remaining on Bravo to the ramp. Speedbird 115 Heavy.
And Speedbird 115 Heavy, what gate number do you possess this evening?
Gate number 5. Speedbird 115 Heavy.
Well, in that case, sir, there's absolutely no reason to rush.
Oh dear.
JetBlue 89 coming out Fox, Texas here.
JetBlue 89, Kennedy ground, runway 31 left, Kilo Echo, right Alpha, and hold short of Juliet.
Right Alpha, short of Juliet, 31 left, Kilo Echo, JetBlue 89.
Kennedy, Delta Tuck 2. Delta Tuck 2, Kennedy ground.
Hotel short of Alpha, request permission reposition, Kilo Golf.
Delta Tuck 2, go right Alpha.
Right Alpha, Delta Tuck 2.
Speedbird 1.
That is, of course, Steve Abraham, known as the Great Kennedy Steve. One of the coolest air traffic controllers, at least in my zip code. Having a great time doing ground at Kennedy. Well, we are about 10 minutes, I think. No, 6 minutes from top of descent here. And we're going to be going down to 12,000 on our way into KSTL. I have to say the airport holds a little bit of sentimental significance for me, not because I spent any extended time in St. Louis, although I was there a couple times and enjoyed the hell out of it. But because when I was about 10 or 12 years old, I got a book out of the local library, and it was about a TWA 707 flight, the chronicle of the entire flight from Kennedy to Rome. I think it was called New York to Rome, Jet Flight 808, and it was written, I guess, about 1962. It was a book for young adults, but it wasn't dumbed down, and it basically, talked about everything that goes into a transoceanic flight, from the flight planning to the loading to the weather, to the crew, to the pushback and takeoff and climb and cruise and navigation. And the plane had a navigator, by the way, but the captain of the flight was a guy named, apparently he was a TWA legend, I guess, which is why this author ended up flying on his flight, a guy named Charles Cradaville, and he was known as Crisis Charlie or Crash Charlie, not because he was especially deadly, because he wasn't, but because he was a character and he had a way of getting into scrapes and then getting out of them again and pulling stunts and things, none of which was actually recounted in the book. I only looked it up later because he lived to a ripe old age. He lived into his late 80s, and he even had a little bit of a small web presence for a little while. And he was mentioned in a retired TWA aviator's newsletter of some sort, and talked about how he was in retirement in St. Louis, or the St. Louis area. I gather where he grew up and where he learned how to fly, and where he met Charles Lindbergh at a barnstorming show at a local airport, and ultimately ended up going to work for TWA, flying DC-2s was his first airplane. And I just remember the entry he had in this little newsletter, and it was that Charlie Cradaville, 87, tends his garden and his house and putters around and jokes that he's got one foot in the grave and another on a banana peel. And I think he lived a couple years after that, so he had a great old life and a great career at TWA. So we're going to be flying into what was once a serious TWA base of operations, and it really continued until just after the merger with American. It continued to be a hub. I'm not sure if it is anymore, but they still do quite a bit of traffic for American. It's probably what they call a focus city and not a hub, but it is an airport that really expanded when it became a hub, kind of like Pittsburgh or Cincinnati, Cleveland to some extent for United, or for American for that matter, Raleigh-Durham, and then kind of has fallen a little bit by the wayside, because now with longer range planes and many more direct flights to many other places, there is less need for a hub in the middle of the country, which is too bad. So we are coming up on top of descent. What you missed while I was away is I bumped my throttle quadrant, and it burped again, and it bounced the number two engine props back and forth just enough for it to blow up the prop governor again, so I had to restart the engine. And ordinarily when I do, the autopilot manages to hold the altitude, but I did something, and next thing you know, when I looked up after being heads down for a second down here, I looked out of the corner of my eye and I saw that our artificial horizon was more like almost blue over brown instead of more like brown over blue instead of blue over brown. We were in a steep, almost a spin, because the autopilot had disconnected and the winds had blown us over a little bit, and we'd gotten way out of hand. So what I did was an unusual attitude recovery, noticed we were nose down, noticed our speed was practically at VNE, so back came the power, up came the nose, and we fought our way back to altitude and back on course, and so here we are, but it was not without its drama. And again, I of course blame my crappy SciTech quadrant, but secondarily, or maybe even above all, I blame my lack of attention. I got myself task saturated with fixing the engines like so, and I was only tangentially looking at this, so blame the pilot. Just see where we are vertically. We're a minute away. There's our TOD. I've set up, in the meantime, the St. Louis runway 30 right ILS here in our nav 1 and 2, and I've set the course for it, which is, the approach course should be 302, and I'll double check that. Hold down the format key again, look here, see that it's 302. Hold down the format key again, go back to our flight plan, pop over here, make sure the same is set. 302 in our nav 2, and note that for our heads-up display we've set the correct runway elevation and the correct runway length, so we're all good there. And we're going to come into some serious shit here, as they say, as our CDI, or our vertical deviation, comes in, and as the nose comes down and we look at our weather, I'm just going to roll off the power a little bit, and I'll see that we are at 2977. Off comes the power. As we go downhill, I'll drop 2977 into our standby, and it is. We'll seat the passengers. Passengers, please sit the hell down. Got to do everything here, including the announcements. We will brief our arrival, which is pretty simple. We're not flying a star. We are merely flying inbound to, ultimately we're going to Tersh, I believe, is our initial approach fix. And it is a plain old vanilla ILS approach, so we'll do the normal tricks, which is flipping us into heading mode and flipping over to blue needles at some point. Although I've discovered independently we could fly it as an overlay, and it doesn't seem to mind, and it provides just about as precise a path as you could want. So if you want to get lazy about it and not flip over to blue needles, it will essentially give you a pseudo ILS in pink needles. So probably not the right way to do it, and I'm almost certain it's not legal, but it can be convenient. So we'll set our V speeds here. Flaps 15 arrival. It's going to be a nice long runway. Just check to see what the rest of our flight plan looks like from here. It looks like we're going to turn onto a left base, in essence, or a left intercept, and then fly on in. Although that's going to involve a bit more of a turn to the north than this seems to indicate. So let me just make sure we have it right. In the meantime, we're on vertical profile, so no need to get nuts about that. Alright, so pop up our flight plan, pop up here. Going to Scove to Riverside. Hey, and it's not moving us. Aha! Got the wrong approach set. Good thing we checked. Arrival. Approach. Runway 30 right. Not sure how that ended up as 12, but again, it's a good thing we checked. 30 right, number 1. In we go, and Tersh is our approach fix. Now, it's going to bitch at us that it has no waypoint. And so we're going to get rid of this no link here. And now we're going to go direct to Tersh, which is 5. And that should get us back. And it's popped us into pitch hold. So just reestablish. And since Tersh is our next, make that 5 grand. And it's set a new top of descent, so let's level ourselves off for a second. Roll the power back in. And pretend we've been cleared only down to 200. We'll reset our altitude to 5. No wonder I had funny altitudes there. Always pays to check. Now, what we can do is we can pop up our flight plan, and now we can walk through. And it still's not showing the rest of our flight plan. This is very disconcerting. Okay. Try it again. Direct to Tersh. If we can't make this do what we want, we will just do what we need. Kind of like a Stones song. Somewhere Keith is smiling. Mumbling something about disconnecting the autopilot, flying the plane, and passing him another beer, please. Alright, it says we are 5 minutes from our new top of descent, but what I'm going to do is quickly check our mileage. We've got 80 miles to go, and we've got to come down 15,000 feet. So it would really only take 45 miles. And give or take, and actually since it's less of a glide slope than strictly speaking is required, it's a gentler glide slope, the fact that it's saying that we would need to do it in 85 minus 30, 55 miles is in concordance with the fact that we've set up for a gentler descent path or vertical profile than we otherwise might. So just doing the numbers do fit. Checking for terrain here and realizing we have none, but what I am going to do is first of all cross-fill our flight plan because it's not showing up correctly here. So we'll turn on our second FMS. I'm not sure, but it might be a requirement for a Cat 2 and 3 approach. I know that 2 sets of nav radios are required, both tuned to the same thing. See how this flight plan is different from this one. I'm not sure why this turned off, because it should have just had a duplicate of this one in it, but let that pass for a minute. Pop ourselves back into VNAV mode. And accept that. Go to flight plan, and now we'll go to data, exfil, flight plan, and now go here and and direct to tertiary here. So now we should have a harmonious display. It doesn't really matter though, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be turning on our weather radar so we can get a better look at what's going to rise up and smite us if we're not careful. Just waiting for top of descent, minute away. And now we've got a tailwind. We were battling a headwind before. I believe we're flying along the Missouri River, but I could be wrong. Fly just southeast. I don't think that's the Mississippi. Or the Mississippi, as they say. And let's tilt our radar down and see what's below us. At the moment, we got nothing. Nothing significant, at least. Green is okay. There's some moisture, but it's not bad. And here comes top of descent. The new one. The right one, we hope. Okay, passengers are seated. Keeping our eye out for icing in a second. Still unusually warm here at altitude. Then again, it's unusually warm in New York. Usually warm all around the eastern United States so far. And we'll just reset our V-app. I'm going to add in a little bit of wind and a little bit extra. There we go. And as we come down the hill, we'll roll off the power. And what you'll see in a second is we'll go out of trim. So we'll have to retrim the rudder. See that? Creep out of trim, less power. Wants to pull a little bit to the right, so we put in a little left rudder to compensate. And Bob's your mother's brother. That is the Mississippi. So we're going to loop around and then turn north. So come south of the field and come back north. Sounds like a plan. And because we might as well get there as soon as we can, let's go down. Anyway, getting back to this book, New York to Rome, Jet Flight 808. It was a ex-military 707 that was flown in the Military Air Transport Service, which was known as MATS. It's now known as MAC, which is Military Airlift Command. I'm sure by now it's known as something new yet again, because the military comes up with new acronyms roughly every 12.5 years. The 707 in question had a sextant because you needed to stick a periscope up, because you needed to take star sightings, because you needed to check your latitude. And there was a navigator on board, and a flight engineer, and a first officer, and a captain, and a second officer. And actually the second officer was the flight engineer, and we're below 180. We'll set local altimeter, which is 2977. But the hot navigation tool, instrument of the time, which threatened to replace the navigator, was something called Doppler navigation. It basically pointed several radar signals at the ground and then measured how fast you were going and which direction you were moving. And it turned out by the time Doppler navigation came into really moderate use, by then inertial navigation was sort of coming into being. because it had been miniaturized for Atlas missiles, for ICBMs, and for the Minuteman. So at that point, they no longer needed Doppler navigation. I'm just going to arm the approach here. Doesn't offer to tune it because it's already been tuned. Just quickly check. Our initial approach fix is going to be Tersh, and I believe we're going directly to it. And as we come down, we'll turn our auxes and pumps on. We will flip our landing lights and logo lights on. Bring our bleeds to min. And I know we're above 10,000, but we're close enough, and I really, since it's just me here, I want to get squared away. In a second, we'll slow to below 250. Although we have extra special clearance, so if we want to, we can come in faster. We've squared it with ATC. They've said anything for the Mighty Dash, anything, and being St. Louis and being not as busy as it used to be, they have said, hey, you got no traffic ahead of you, you're good to go. Alright, there is our approach path. Let me just see what our altitude at our intermediate fix should be, which is Raleigh, which will be 2100. So let's just set that as a floor right here. And what I'll do is quickly look at our ILS. Okay, we're sort of deviated from it to the point where we're not really going to receive it, but you can see we're 11 miles and closing on the field. We're going to overfly the field just off to our right. So you can skip that, no need for that. See, we're going to be a beam it in 1 second, and then we're going to turn around here pretty sharpish, and then probably because we'll blow wide of it, we'll have to re-intercept coming this way. And with any luck, our VNAV profile should let us follow this entire sequence down. But once I get established this way, we will switch into heading mode. We'll flip over to our nav1 for our nav source, and then have a nice whack at it using the old-fashioned way. On this flight to Rome, by the way, they served fried chicken in coach and Chateaubriand in first class, so some things never change. Colleague I worked with over at the TV network, one of our executive producers who recently left the company, he was a TWA steward for a while on transatlantic flights and worked his way through college that way. He referred to himself, and my apologies in advance to anybody who worked at TWA or who worked or works as a flight attendant. He said he and his fellow cabin crew members used to refer to themselves as sky whores. So again, apologies in advance. Alright, we're going to get, I suspect we're going to get iced and maybe screwed and maybe tattooed as well. So I'm just going to turn on our ice protection in advance here because I can see this going pear-shaped very quickly. Maybe I'm wrong, but there's snow on the ground and there's moisture in the sky. We're below 250 now, and we're going to make our turn back around to final. What I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to pretend we're getting vectored here. So I'm going to pop ourselves into heading mode and get ourselves more on a reasonable intercept. So I'm going to turn ourselves to the left here, go into heading select mode, come down on speed here, and I'm going to widen ourselves out just a little bit because this is not a realistic plan of action here. Other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set our altitude to 5,000, and we're going to do this manually. Forget about the VNAV for a minute, put ourselves in vertical speed mode, and continue downward and upward as we circle over the mighty Mississippi here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put ourselves on a right downwind right now, as you can see I'm doing, just roughly out that way. We'll turn base, and then we will come in and grab the localizer. I'm going to switch over the nav source, and you can see right now we are on that downwind leg. We're heading directly away from the localizer, and we are at 121, which is parallel. That's the reciprocal of 30. And right now we are above glide slope, which is going to change in a minute when we come down. And here comes our glide slope. We're going to wait till it gets to about here, and then we're going to turn and we're going to level out at 5. Set up for our landing here. Props can come to here. So we're set up for an 850 landing. Our bleeds are already on min. We are now creeping underneath the glide slope, which is what we should be doing. And the fact that we leveled off naturally slows us down. Just going to wait till it gets right to there and turn ourselves base. Matter of fact, we can do that now. So we're going to go to 211. 210. Actually 211. Bring out our first notch of flaps. And we're just going to creep around here, and we're going to intercept the localizer. With any luck, we'll do it from the northeast. But if not, we'll blow through it and come around the other way. Our speed's just a little bit low. We will have gotten the instructions from ATC to pick up the speed. I'm going to set ourselves for an intercept heading right now. Retrim just a little bit. And I will in 1 second, like now, set us into nav tracking, and it is now going to capture the localizer. Now we've got 1 notch of flaps in, so I'm going to try and stay below 200 so as not to break anything. And we have to stay at 5,000 till Hixham, and then we can come down 1,500 feet. And look at that. That's not bad. And actually, with the glide slope where it is, I can just pop us into approach mode right now. This will illuminate in white. And let us put up the HUD. Actually, before we do that, let's just check our icing. Okay, there's no icing, so let's turn off the protection. We're already down low enough. Down can come the HUD. up can come our eyeballs. And we're already there. Alright, so when I get within about 10 DME, I'll drop our gear. Just a little fast for those flaps. And I don't like that this is indicating we should be higher. Right there, let me just see what our... no, we're on our glide slope. We need to just come a little bit in on the localizer, but I think it's doing it for us. Slow us a little bit. You see where our nose is right now? It's just slightly nose down. I'm going to come off the power until it brings the nose up to about there and slows us just a little bit more. No rush here. You notice we got ourselves on a nice, easy intercept and then final approach. Which for the most part at a big airport with a big plane is what ATC would do for you. They would not bring you in high, make you turn unbelievably steeply, then attempt to smash you into the ground. Alright, so when we get to 10 DME, we'll drop the gear and you'll notice we'll just naturally slow down. And at that point, I think I'll just fly the airplane. Because there ain't no reason not to. So we're past our exhales, so we can come down to 2100, and we're already set to do that. And there we are inside 10. Down comes the gear. Just retrim slightly before I take control. Okay.
2500.
And now we are flying. I'm going to bring up the nose myself just slightly. Now you notice how the wings on the little flight path vector are sitting right on the 3-degree downslope, which is just as it should be. Okay, we'll put in our next 2 notches of flaps. Balloon up a little bit, but our nose will come down slightly, which is again as it should be. Just get ourselves settled in. And I'm setting up a little bit more sync. I'm at 900 feet per minute there, just catching our energy. There. Speed come off a little bit more. There's our outer marker. Get ourselves fully configured. Quickly check our flaps are correct. Yep. And we're looking good. Get rid of this. And
1000.
I've got a little bit of a headwind component, so I'm keeping a little bit of extra airspeed in case it vanishes close to the ground. Let ourselves come down here, and you see it says I'm right on the glide slope, but the PAPIs indicate otherwise, and I don't know why. And now it says I'm low, and actually the picture says I'm low, so the PAPIs are a little bit wonky. See how that runway picture looks almost perfect? And yet it says we're low on the glide slope, so we'll humor it. Flatten out our descent just a little bit. It's the world's slowest descent because of the headwind. But its runway's just floating there like a great big
Plus 100.
floaty thing.
Minimums.
Almost exactly 0 degrees pitch, so we'll only have a very slight little flare when we
100.
do flare. Just making minor trim and minor power adjustments.
50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
And we grease it on. 12 feet per minute. Almost a record. Let's get hard on the brakes here and see if we can make this turn off. Of course we can. Mighty Dash can do almost anything. And that is St. Louis Lambert Field. Nice flight. As we hold short of 30 left here. Thanks for watching. Our next leg is probably going to take us, I'm thinking, to Buffalo, and then from Buffalo to Montreal, and then out across the Atlantic. So you know the routine. Let me know what you think. Give me thumbs up, give me thumbs down. Tell me I'm a hell of a guy. Subscribe if you want to see more. Give me suggestions on where to fly. I think I'm almost certainly going to fly to Halifax from Montreal, and then there's one airport somewhere on Newfoundland that there exists an add-on airport for, and I'll figure out what that is and I'll let you know. But from there it's on to Shannon, Ireland, and then somebody already suggested Southampton, which is absolutely ideal for the dash because Flybe flies lots of dashes in there. And then probably someplace in France. I'm open to suggestions. And then after that, Switzerland. A suitably devious and nasty airfield surrounded by mountains would be great. So your suggestions are really, really welcome. And until we meet again on the way to Buffalo, thanks for watching. See you real soon.